I'm Karin Fields. I am a mental health professional here in town. I work in a private practice called LCS Integrative Counseling, where I see kids, families, grown-ups. I do a lot of supervision of other counselors, and yeah, I've got a lot of kind of niches in that. Recently, I took a job at the university as an assistant professor in the counselor education department, so I'm doing a little bit more of that now too. And on the side, one of my favorite things to learn about and talk about is the Enneagram, which fits in with both of those things really well. And so I'm excited to share a little bit about why I like it and how maybe it could be useful for you in your own life and in the way you relate to people. So from contempt to compassion is what I term this, using the Enneagram to deepen understanding and build connection. So let's just start with some introspection. Be honest. Think of someone in your life who you feel some discomfort, even hostility toward. Take a second and really think about it. For some of you, this might come very easily, which might be related to your personality. For others of you, you might be thinking, oh, I don't want to say that. I don't know. I mean, it's right, which probably relates to your personality too. What characteristics about that individual elicit that reaction in you? So I want you to dig a little deeper than just their behavior, although the behavior is probably the part that is just uncomfortable or even offensive to you, and think, what is it about that person? And what do you think about that person and those behaviors that elicits that response in you? Give me some answers to that. You don't have to tell me who, please don't name anybody in the room, but what is it about it? Yeah.
Okay, my boyfriend.
Named it. She named it.
Yeah, I did. No, I only say that because I see a lot of potential in him. So maybe I hold him to high standards. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So maybe if something goes wrong or something like that, maybe I'm a little too explosive just because I feel like there's potential with this guy. You know what I mean? I feel like him and I could go somewhere.
Yeah, so some of that hostility and discomfort comes in kind of seeing potential in somebody that is not being lived into, right? Pay attention to that as we go through the personality traits. Yeah.
I have a brother-in-law who is a benevolent bully. So he will decide
I do too! My family's here.
he will decide what's right for you and make it so, and you don't have a say. Drives me up the wall.
So there's something about that I love the benevolent bully part.
Oh yeah.
So
He's a
something
good
about
guy.
him kind of taking some of the power there from you, and
Oh,
he's going to tell you what to do, and you don't have to say about it. And there's something about that creates this tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? Yeah.
I have a best friend that goes way back to like 7th grade.
Yeah.
And she's not being truthful. And so I'm like, okay. And then that makes me question, what am I doing? You know, that's making her not be truthful, or what is it that she's doing or going through?
So the value of honesty comes up. What is it about? Why? Either what am I doing that is creating this energy that you can't be honest with me, or what's going on with her that she thinks lying or being dishonest is the way to go, right? There's something about that creates discomfort for you. One more. Anyone else? Oh, yeah.
So I have a professor, like when she explains things, it seems like she doesn't really care about people understanding, so like we just have to teach ourselves.
So that frustration of one kind of her not, it sounds to me maybe a little bit like not taking that level of that job seriously, of hey, this is my job, is to communicate this to you and help you understand it. And then some frustration like, this is your job, now I have to do this job. That doesn't seem fair. Yeah. That fairness and also that engagement. I want people to be engaged with me. I want people to connect. Yeah. So this is all kind of connected to this idea of the lens we take to view the world, right? And so for the Enneagram, this idea is that there are 9, which might feel limited, and so if you want to do more work, you can realize it's not, we're not typing people into 9 small boxes, but there are 9 general views of the world. It's like putting on a different pair of glasses. And some of what is coming up for you that might cause frustration in you about others is, one, people who don't have the same glasses on that you do, or that maybe do, and you're frustrated with them, and you might hold them to higher standards because you think they should do better, right? So why contempt? Why did I put that as a part of understanding? Why is that the word I chose? And honestly, it is a byproduct of the current cultural climate. Because this word is everywhere. We feel it, we experience it, we see it. And I thought, well, what is it really? And the first definition that comes up in Merriam-Webster, the act of despising. The state of mind of one who despises. And I think to myself, and this has something to do with my personality, it's not contempt. That's too strong. It's not contempt. I don't despise people. I just don't like them. Right? But it's a quick shift from being bothered by someone's behavior to having contempt for who they are and what they represent. So what is the Enneagram? And I want to be clear about this. You guys, I've been studying this for over a year, like pretty in-depth studying the Enneagram, and there's tons that I don't know. There's so much more learning I have to do. And so what I don't want you to think is you're going to walk out of here with a complete understanding of the Enneagram, what your type is, and what everyone else in your life's type is, right? But I do hope this might be a doorway for you to do some of your own exploration on this. Because for me, as somebody who's been in the field of counseling, somebody who's done a lot of my own inner work, there is nothing that I have encountered that was more powerfully discerning than the Enneagram for me. Because it not only talks about, hey, this is how you act at a party. It also talks about what's going on underneath. What is motivating my behaviors? How do I frame the way I view people, relationships, the world? And what parts of it do I really not want to show anybody? That I know are there deep down that I really hope no one else does. And facing some of that kind of the shadow self is something that as counselors we would talk about, right? That shadow side, that part of us that we don't really want to identify with. That coming to a place of completion, seeing it holistically and saying, I'm all of these things, both the good and the bad, the hard and the easy. And so the Enneagram really does that for me. So what is it really, really generally? It's an ancient typology system. 9 ways of, like I said, seeing the world and responding to yourself, to others, and your environment. Really complex, very fluid. Your tendency after getting a tiny bit of information is going to be to type everybody you encounter. And some of that's a little bit natural, and some of that's helping you learn it and kind of start identifying it. But I would caution you, because we can use it in the same way then that we're just talking about, right? We can use it as a way to identify immediate behaviors and write people off. And that's not the purpose. So what are the 9 types? And since we have a short amount of time, I'm going to go through them as kind of quickly and acknowledging that I'm going through them quickly. So I want you to kind of be thinking about how you're going to hold on to certain pieces of information. So I'll show you different people in the room might hold on to them differently. It might help you to remember some adjectives. It might help you to remember what causes stress for that number. But just, again, keep in mind that you're going to kind of let this information wash over you today. That's kind of the point today, okay? And my hope is that by the end, we will understand a little bit better how this particular system might help us move from a position of contempt to a position of compassion. So the type 1, oftentimes termed the perfectionist, also the reformer. The type 1 is motivated by doing what is right. Flip side of that also, correcting what is wrong. They see the wrong everywhere. Everywhere. Like a critical tape running through their head. It could be a picture frame. It could be a shirt untucked. Oftentimes though, although those behavioral things come out a lot for type 1s, it's internal. And oftentimes it's self-directed. They see the wrong in themselves way more than they see the wrong even in everybody around them. There's a high standard for type 1s that they put on themselves. And guess what? Because of that, it can trickle out into their relationships sometimes. They really respond sensitively to criticism because every single moment of every single day they're trying to do the right thing. Every single moment of every single day, right? So when somebody else criticizes behavior, it's like, it's a dagger. But that fear then, and again, what makes it different than just behavior is what is motivating this behavior? That fear of being bad, defective, right? Some people, we even say evil, right? Like just bad, like not being good. So then, think about situationally what might stress a type 1. Well, when things aren't perfect, right? When rules aren't followed. Anyone have anybody in their mind that's just a real stickler for the rules? When self or others aren't doing their best. They have a strong desire to be good, and they want other people to be good too. They also have a strong desire for control. And oftentimes that's a behavior we see that bothers us about type 1s. And I'm not saying that behavior shouldn't bother you. If you've got somebody in your life that likes to tell you all the things you're doing wrong and have control over you, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying though is if we understand where that motivation's coming from, we might have a little bit more compassion for them and why they're doing it. So what are the adjectives that might describe the type 1? Responsible, moral, organized, hardworking, careful, conscientious, loyal. Right? So whatever a type 1 deems as valuable and important and right, they're going to do everything they can to do that well. So if they're a mother, my mom, if they're a mother, then they want to be the best mother ever. They want to do everything right. And they're really intentional about it, right? Sometimes though that can look a little demanding. That can feel controlling. It can feel critical. Not from my mom. My mom never did that. Self-righteous even, kind of, I've got the moral high ground here. Like, just listen to me and you'll be fine. So what are some relational struggles for type 1? Pushing for perfection and constantly finding fault with others. Taking responsibility for things they don't need to do, and here's the key, then resenting it. Right? But feeling like if I don't do it, then it's not going to get done right. But then kind of resenting, why am I doing all these things? Right? Needing to be right all the time. And listen, there are different variations of how this is going to look for different people, which is not for today. There are so many layers to the Enneagram that have to do with your instincts and wings and subtitles, all these different things. So it's not going to look the same for all type 1s, but some flavor of this is going to come out, oftentimes for people who identify as type 1. So we're going to take a second, before we move on to 2, I want you to take a second and hold on into your mind if either you or someone you know in your life may possibly, we're not typing them, but may possibly fit somewhere into this category. Okay, just take a second. Sometimes having a person in mind, although we don't want to type, it can help us hold on to the number a little bit. So if you can think of somebody, write it down or just have it in your own mind of, yeah, this is somebody that might fit in here. Might. Okay. 2, the helper. I want to be liked. Giver is another word for them. Befriender is another word for them. I'm a type 2, and I like the word befriender. I don't know. It's just me. What motivates a 2? People. Period. People. Connecting with people. I don't just want to meet somebody, I want to know somebody. I don't just want to know somebody, I want to be in relationship with that person. Even if it's like the person at the grocery store. But let me tell you what's really underneath it. I want them to like me. Even the person at the grocery store, I just want them to like me. Right? Yeah, it's important to me. And so because of that, I really want to be seen as helpful and loving. So that's what motivates me. I want to be seen as helpful and loving. That doesn't mean I'm also not helpful and loving at times, but my motivation is it's important to me to be seen that way. So what's my fear? I'm going to use me since I'm a 2. Being unworthy of love, being unloved, right? So that drives the behavior of a 2. So when they're stressed, when it's not working for them, might be when they're feeling unwanted, unloved, or unappreciated. It might be when people are upset with them, right? And you'll find there are some numbers that have no problem telling you when they're upset with you. And for a type 2, it's like what? But that was just one behavior I did. Why are you upset with me? But all these other things about me are so great. Like we can't, it's like it does not compute. It's so overwhelming to think, right? But for other numbers, it's like, don't personalize it to your whole identity, person. I'm just telling you, can you not do that again, right? It seems simple enough to other types, but for a type 2, it feels so personal to be criticized because it feels like I'm not wanted, I'm not loved, I'm not appreciated. So some adjectives to describe the 2. Empathetic, affectionate, they're very, like you're gonna kind of know that you're loved because they're gonna put their hand on your shoulder more. Not all type 2s, but a lot of times there's a physical touch component to it. Relational, friendly, sensitive, emotionally connected and expressive. So it's kind of like they see me. They're intuitive to people's needs and they want to meet them. So because of that, they know sometimes like what's going on in the room. They can also be people-pleasing, prideful, right? I know what's best for you. I know how to meet your needs, right? Relationally controlling and possessive, right? So if they're feeling a little insecurity, like maybe that friend of mine likes that other friend better, they might start getting pretty possessive. Also flattering, ingratiating, jealous. So you can imagine then, there are some relational struggles for type 2. Overcommitting to people and causes until they burn out. They lack boundaries. And the motivation behind it is the more connection, the better. The more people like me, the better. The more I can help, the better. But what happens then is we spread ourselves so thin that we're not really helping anybody. And we're burning out, and then we resent it. Lack boundaries. Assuming other people are needy and lost without them, right? That's where some of that pride comes in. I've made myself indispensable to people, so that they must need me, because if they don't need me, then they don't love me. Becoming manipulative and controlling when they think they're losing someone's love, right? So again, that grasping, like, oh no, like that person's kind of slipping away from me. What do I need to do to kind of get back in with that person? So I want you to think for a moment about this description. And if it might feel true for you, or if it might feel true about someone else in your life who you love. Got it? Holding that. Type 3, the achiever or performer. I want to do the best, right? Their motivation is praise and recognition. They want to be the best. They want to win. But what's underneath it is that is how they get their self-worth. If I do well, then I'm enough. Doing over being. I have to succeed, achieve, do all of these things to be worthy. And that's that fear, being worthless. Without all these things I do, I'm nothing. So stressors then for a 3, losing, right? Not being the best. It's like the most tangible way of feeling worthless, right? I didn't win, I'm not the best. Not excelling at something, right? And you'll find this a lot for type 3s. If there's something they don't think they're very good at, they distance themselves from it. Like, no thanks. I'd rather not even put my name in the hat there for that, because I don't think that's something I'm really good at. Not getting what they want. And this is a big one for type 3s, and this comes up a lot in the work world, wasting time. Efficiency is really, really valuable for a 3 because they have so much they want to do and get done. And so let's say sitting in a room where we're all just kind of talking about our day, but we're not actually getting to the agenda. A type 3 might kind of, okay, so we have stuff to do, right? And that might come across as dismissive, that might come across as cold. But also, if we can slow down and not have judgment or even maybe contempt for that, then what we might realize is what's driving that behavior for that 3. Getting stuff done, feeling like if we waste time, we're not going to get as much done, right? That doesn't mean that we agree with that behavior necessarily, but it gives us a little bit more understanding of where that behavior comes from. So some adjectives to describe the 3. Charming, right? And this is the thing. They want to get stuff done. They're really efficient. They're really successful oftentimes in whatever they deem successful. But they do it in a way that is charming, right? So you, a lot of times, want them to take the lead. You want them to do well because they've got some charisma to them a lot of times. They're adaptable. They figure out what works in whatever environment they're in, and they change themselves to it. They're chameleon-like in that way. Oh, I'm in this room and we're talking about rowing. I know how to talk about rowing. I'm in. Then we're in this room and we're talking about business. Oh, I can talk about business and I'm in. And if I can't do it, then I'm going to remove myself from that because I don't want to be somewhere where I can't seem like I'm the best or I know what I'm talking about or competent. So they seem confident. Doesn't mean they are. They seem confident. Persistent, right? They're going to achieve. They're going to push forward. They're quick learners. They're always thinking. So this is another element to the Enneagram we're not going to get into today, but they're very future-oriented. So they're always planning out 10 steps ahead. I did this and this and this and this. Okay, right? It happens like this. It's so quick. They're also image conscious, right? That's that chameleon. I want to be worthy in every environment that I'm in. And so what does this environment want from me? And that's what I'm going to give them. They can be opportunistic, conceited. They can be dishonest. And some of that, again, is kind of not really being genuine to who they are for the sake of being adaptable to other people. They might come across as being disingenuous and dishonest because you don't really know what they actually think if you get close enough to them. They can be shallow, depending on the type. Sometimes very image conscious, very concerned with how they appear. And again, different people will wear 3 very differently, but that can be something we notice about 3s. So what are some relationship struggles for a type 3? Neglecting loved ones because of self-imposed pressure to succeed. That would make sense, right? Because if your goal is to achieve, then relationships might feel like the thing that can go, right? And that happens a lot for type 3s. Neglecting relationship for pursuit of whatever their excellence or success would look like. Playing the chameleon, making it hard to really know them, right? You're this person with this group, you're this person with this group. So somebody who goes to both of those parties with that person might feel confused sometimes. Like, who are you really? Thinking of other people as extensions of themselves who reflect, sorry, it should be well. Thank you, Mom. See, that type 1, did you hear that? She just pointed that out. She needed me to know. I forgot my W. Well or badly on them. Right? So this can be a big deal. In my counseling practice, I work with a lot of 3 parents who are imposing that on their children. Right? Like, fix this behavior because it's really not going well at the family get-togethers when this kid does that. It's a lot of image because you're an extension of me, so I need that to change. Think about the 3. Think about this achiever, this performer, right? Anybody stand out to you? Or could that possibly be a type that resonates with you personally? The 4, the individualist. The romantic, it's often called. The creative sometimes. These individuals want to feel and experience the pain and beauty of life. They're deep. They're deep. They feel deeply. They live deeply. They experience deeply. And what motivates them is a desire to be special, significant, to be themselves, and to be known. And this is like a misnomer sometimes of the type 4, the special. Like, oh, they want to be special. No, it's significant. I want my existence to matter in a way that no one else's existence matters. So the fear then is not having significance, or also identity. So stressors for the 4, feeling misunderstood. And this is what's interesting though, Because on the one hand, being perceived as ordinary would be a stressor for a 4, but also being perceived as different sometimes can be a stressor for a 4. And this is what is so beautiful about the 4, right, is that they want to be significant, they want to be unique in who they are and not have to conform to any standard or societal expectation, but they also want to be accepted. Deeply, deeply they want to belong. Probably more than any other number. Because that's also part of significant existence, is belonging and connecting. And they get that. They get that on a really deep level. So some adjectives for 4s. Self-aware, sensitive, imaginative, creative, intuitive, compassionate, unique. Other adjectives might be dramatic, withdrawn, temperamental, self-conscious, reserved, jealous, and self-absorbed. And I write those up there, and one of the reasons I'm giving the adjectives is I think, going back to our beginning exercise, these are some of the words that might pop up. And what is it about certain people that bothers us? And these are some of the words that might, oh, they're too sensitive. Oh, they're too self-absorbed, right? These are some of the words that might pop up. But when we dig into each personality type, we realize part of that self-absorption is an intense self-awareness. Right? It doesn't mean it's okay to be self-absorbed, and it doesn't mean it's not good to remind our friends and family members who might be in that place sometimes to connect and move out of that a little bit, but it's understanding, right? What is going on underneath the surface for that person? So the 4 can have some trouble relationally, right? Just like any number. Being overly moody and self-absorbed, right? So sometimes, especially in this deep desire to belong and connect, they can get so lost in their own minds and emotional experiences that it can be really difficult for them to even stay connected. And it can feel moody and self-absorbed. 4s can engage in this push-pull behavior with people, kind of like, come closer, no, go away, come closer, no, go away. And a lot of that is that fear, right, that I think you might leave me, so maybe you should go away. Oh, but now I want to pull you closer because you might leave me. It's a lot of push-pull because it's this fear of wanting to connect while being known, right? And this fear that if I'm actually known, no one's going to really want to connect. So it's exhausting a lot of times for 4s to be in close relationship with people because of this process going on underneath the surface. Believing someone else can and should complete them. So all numbers have this on some level, obviously, right? That kind of, that ideal of, oh, if just someone out there could really understand me. But I'll tell you, for a 4, it's really so deep because it's this belief that if I could actually be fully loved and fully known, there would be nothing better in the entire universe. Right? So take a second and think about the type 4. Does anyone come to your mind, or is this a type that might fit for you? The 5, the observer, investigator. I want to understand and know as much as I can. So the motivation for the 5 is competence, knowledge, and also self-sufficiency. I want my own knowledge to be able to sustain me. So the fear then for the 5 is being incapable or also helpless, right? So again, I have to be self-sufficient, and so if I'm not, and my knowledge is how I get there, then that's helpless. That's a helpless feeling. So stressors for the type 5, feeling incompetent, not knowing how to do something. Now, if it's not something they need to know how to do, that's fine. There might not be there's not like a ton of ego about that for a 5. Like I don't study that. So why would I be an expert on that? I don't study that. But if there is a need for them to know something and they don't know it, there's some stress there. I need to know it, right? But also some excitement because knowledge is energy for them too. Not being able to regroup alone, and this kind of goes into the adjectives for the type 5. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, a 5 is more introverted and independent. So kind of doing their own thing, not needing to kind of be engaged in a lot of kind of social context. Doesn't mean they can't or they won't. Thoughtful, witty, analytical, curious and perceptive. Other words that could come up: anxious, detached, private, quiet, sensitive, and isolated. The system, and I don't know it because I'm not a 5, but I've got a very close 5 in my life, and the system of how information gets processed and all that goes into the mind and the work of the mind of the 5. If it could be like written out in a book, which a 5 would never want, because it wouldn't do justice to what's really going on. But 2, that would be very exposing on some level for people to know that level of inner working of their mind. But it is intricate, detailed, complex, right? It's like all these things going on underneath the surface that lead them to these thoughts and ideas and knowledge. So there are some struggles for 5s in relationship. Withdrawing from relationships because people's needs seem draining. Right? And this is interesting. It's not because they don't want to meet needs, though. They're actually very generous with their people. Their people, the people that they have some commitment to. But it's really this fear of, if I give so much, I won't have enough for myself. Because I need to be able to be self-sufficient. So if I'm giving a lot, I might get depleted, right? And so things getting sprung on a type 5 can be really difficult then. Right? Like, oh, we're going to do this. And it's like, I didn't structure my energy for the day that way at all, right? Like, no, I knew we were going to work, and I knew that then afterward we had that dinner plan, but like, I had no idea we were doing this other thing. Because there's this reserve system of trying to figure out where energy goes. And so it can feel draining sometimes to be in relationship and not knowing how much to give versus when to pull back and how to still take care of oneself. The tendency to observe connections instead of participating in them, right? So they're called the observer because they are observing everything all the time, right? So, but the observing stance is a bit more pulled back because you can't observe everything if you're right in the middle of something. You're only observing what's right there in front of you, right? So there's a pull back stance sometimes. So the engagement piece for the 5, being able to participate in the connection instead of just observe them. And sometimes being out of touch with their emotions. So and some of this again depends on their different flavors to the 5. So some 5s are very in touch with their emotions. But the idea is that 5s oftentimes think their feelings before they feel their feelings. Which makes sense because thinking is their mode. That's how they get through life. That's how they're self-sufficient. That's how they take care of themselves. And that's just generally how they process information, right? So they can think their feelings before they feel them. Or I would say this, at least that's how they're going to verbalize them first. So they might be feeling them first, but how they're going to verbalize them first oftentimes might be through their thoughts. So I want you to take a second. Think about a possible type 5 in your life. Or maybe if that's where you identify. The 6, the loyalist or questioner. I've really adopted the nomer questioner in a lot of ways because I think the 6 is a very broad category. It looks really, really different on different people. But this idea of kind of questioning comes up a lot for 6s. Wanting to be safe and secure. This motivation to feel safe and preventing bad things from happening. So 6s are oftentimes that worst case scenario thinker. Like, they walk into a room, it's like we all kind of walk into rooms differently, and a 6 walks in the room and is like, where's the exit? There's a lot of people here. Okay, what's the temperature? Like there's a lot of assessment to kind of their environment, and this idea of, do I need to do something? Is there something that I need to do to make sure that I, or possibly people around me, stay safe and secure? So the fear that is that being without support. This is the thing, that they get more secure and feel more safe with support, right? Environmental support, relational support, structural support. So those can be stressors for the type 6. Uncertainty, lack of clear structure and authority is really, really overwhelming for a type 6. Who's in charge? What does that look like? And can I trust that person in charge? And because of that, there's actually kind of a natural inclination to distrust authority in some ways, even though they want it and they need it, and it feels safe to have it. There's some challenging behaviors that sixes might kind of go through to figure out if somebody is worthy of their trust, right? They're more hesitant, skeptical at times, kind of assuming that maybe people might not be trusted. So some adjectives that describe a type 6. And again, it's a very broad number. As you learn more about it, you'll see that. So it's hard to even narrow it down. Some pretty general ones. Reliable, conscientious, trustworthy. Often funny. So there's a little self-deprecating humor to the 6, especially 6s that are really aware of some of the, might look like some neurotic behaviors of that fear, right? Playing out. There's some kind of humor in that sometimes. Cautious, responsible. They're like an amazing number 2 person. Like, they're going to think about all those things that a lot of times kind of that charismatic leader is not going to be thinking about. Anxious, they can be contradictory in some ways. Again, it's kind of like there's this and then there's this, and they exist in that contradiction. Suspicious, panicky sometimes. Again, not all type 6s will present that way. Pessimistic, complaining, and undermining. And this is, the complaining part is the part that I think relationally speaking, especially in work environments, we might have some 6s in our lives who we might think to ourselves, oh, they're complaining all the time, right? Or you might think, I think I might do that. Some of where the complaining comes from for a type 6 is their kind of effort to try to figure out what it would take to feel safe and secure, right? So the complaining comes in when it's like, well, and this happened, and this happened. It's like they're externally trying to make sense of all these things going on around them. And because there's a little bent towards some pessimism, kind of assuming maybe things might not be going the way they need to be going, it can look like complaining. But I'll tell you what, similar to a 1, they can identify problems better than most people because they're already thinking that. They're already going to that worst case scenario and thinking of exceptions and thinking, that sounds great in this, but what about this? And that's really helpful organizationally and relationally, but it can also feel really draining. Sometimes you just want the 6 to say, cool, right? But it's difficult for them to do. So some struggles for relationship type 6. Doubting their relationships or partners. So again, a lot of like, can I really trust you? Maybe even like some pushing away. Testing a little bit relationally sometimes to see if they're really trustworthy, if they're really going to stick around. And part of that is because that loyalist part of the type 6, when they're in, they're in. They're in. And so there's a little work you might have to do up front sometimes to prove yourself to be trustworthy to them. Holding on to past hurts and disappointments. Again, they're thinking about all those things all the time, thinking about all these things that have gone wrong, and that leads them to believe that things could continue to go wrong. Worrying so much that their anxiety alienates others, right? So all numbers can have anxiety. All numbers can have anxiety disorders. All numbers can feel debilitated by anxiety. There's a specific type of anxiety oftentimes for a type 6, that never feeling secure, never feeling safe, that questioning that can really impact relationships sometimes, when sometimes we just have to be able to say, I'm here, I'm okay, I can be safe and comfortable here. So I want you to think about the relationships in your life and see if there's anyone that might identify with the 6, or if you yourself might identify with type 6. Again, we're holding these loosely right now. We're not typing, but we're holding them loosely. Type 7, the enthusiast or the epicure. These are people that they want to have fun and try new things. They're experiential. I want to experience life to the fullest. So that motivation to experience life also then leads to a motivation to avoid unpleasant and uncomfortable situations and feelings, right? That's not good. That doesn't feel good. I don't want that. I want to pull away from that. And so the fear then for the 7 is being deprived or in pain, right? So again, if life is about having good, positive, great experiences, I don't want to feel pain and I don't want to feel deprived. Stressors then, missing out on experiences. FOMO. FOMO for 7s is real, right? I don't want to miss anything. But what happens then is sometimes it feels like when you're interacting with a 7 who's experiencing some FOMO that they're not really content with you, hanging out, doing the normal stuff, right? Because there's always kind of something bigger and better they're looking toward. Being bored. And some of that is that there's an underlying sense of anxiety for the 7 too. They're in what's called the thinking triad, which again is a layer we're not going to cover here. But there is an underlying level of anxiety sometimes for the 7, so boredom creates an opportunity to feel some of that. That doesn't feel good. Repetition, right? So 7s in jobs where they're doing the same thing every day is like killing their soul. It's just horrific. It's so, so heavy to be doing the same thing every day. Which can be difficult then in life tasks, right? Like, you know, life tasks that we have to do every day. It can be really difficult. But they also have this ability, they're really optimistic, so they make things fun. So some of those life tasks, the way they get through them is just to make them more enjoyable. And that's why 7s can be pretty fun to be around too. Some adjectives to describe the 7. Oftentimes 7s are extroverted. That doesn't mean that in their inner world they don't still get rest and regroup by being on their own and being alone, because plenty of 7s might, but they present very extroverted. When they're in a room, they're in a room. Oftentimes optimistic, curious. There's this curiosity to the 7. Quick-witted, spontaneous, adventurous, fun, versatile, but also can seem distracted, impatient, scattered, irresponsible, shallow, sharp, and loud. So I want you to, here's some relationships. Getting bored quickly, moving on to avoid negative experiences. Escaping reality through excess. So 7s, all numbers are susceptible to different types. Any number can be addicted, first of all, but certain numbers have a susceptibility to different types of addictions. 7s is kind of all of them. Like, I just want to experience things, I want to feel things, and I also want to escape. So things like substances are really appealing for 7s sometimes. Entertainment though too, it might not be an actual kind of a substance use addiction, but just entertainment. Excess, right? So wanting to go big, right? Big trips, big things. And always wanting to get their own way. So again, this is like kind of an interesting angle to the 7. They're really stubborn about that. They really want their own way. But they don't necessarily care about having power over anyone else, so if they're not getting their own way, oftentimes they'll just leave. They'll just leave. Like, it's not fun anymore, or I'm not getting my way, so I'm just not going to be here. I want you to think about somebody in your life that may identify with type 7, or if that's a number that might fit for you. 8, the challenger, the boss. I want to exert strength and energy at all times. Motivation for 8, power, control, freedom. Their fear is being harmed or controlled by others. So 8s can be very generous, energetic, they're charismatic, there's a protective side to the 8. They're very decisive, direct, like they're going to tell you exactly what they think pretty much all the time, right? That can also then lead to some of these other adjectives: domineering, aggressive, argumentative, intense, retaliatory, and impulsive, right? They move real quick, and it can be really frustrating and impatient for them when other people don't move quick too. They're big energy and they're quick moving, which can be really intimidating for people. And that's a word that comes up a lot for people interacting with 8s, especially unhealthy 8s who aren't really aware of themselves. It's intimidating. So stressors though for the 8, feeling exposed or vulnerable. That's a fear. Being vulnerable means that I don't have control or power, and that's risky and I can't handle that. Perceiving that someone else is trying to control them. It's not going to go over well for an 8. And then ambiguous and indirect communication. So again, in workplace and in relationships, I'm like a beat around the bush kind of person because I never want to offend anybody. And the 8s in my life are like, stop, like, what do you want? You know, they look at me kind of, just tell me, right? And they're not usually easily offended by that. If I just say, hey, when you do this, it kind of bothers me, can you do this? Yeah, okay, yeah, right? Sure, just tell me what you want. They're not always going to do it, but they'll hear you, and they respect clarity, they respect direct. Relationship struggles for the 8, being unwilling to be vulnerable, right? So it's kind of like, even though they can be generous and protective and caring and loving, and they love big when they love, right? It's hard sometimes when you're in close relationship with them to feel like they're letting their guard down. Also this idea of kind of aggressively promoting their own agenda. They don't mean to come across as aggressive. They're not always even aware bodily that they're doing it because they're just big energy and they're excited about something. But this can cause some pullback relationally. and picking fights for no apparent reason. So my office manager at my office is an 8, and she was talking about being an 8, and she's like, I don't really like that it said that, because we were doing this other workshop and she was there, and she's like, I don't really like that it says that because I know the reason. And I was like, right, exactly, right? So on my end, I'm like, where is this coming from? Why in the world? But she's like, it's not for no apparent reason. I'm like, gotcha. And then I'm like, you're right, right? Because I'm a 2, and I'm like, sure, you're right. Don't fight with me. So I want you to think about 8s. And 8s are typically big energy, like I said. So there are people in your life who take up a lot of space. My second child, I'm not really supposed to type kids. Some of them feel very clear. My second child is an 8. And she, you just feel it in her body. She walks into the room, and you feel her, right? There's a bit of that for an 8. But what you also feel when she walks into a room, especially when she's light and she's not kind of burdened by something, is like, I can take on this whole room with energy, and what do you need, and how can I help, and I love you, and right, it's big. She loves big, right? So everything feels big. Good and bad, right? Everything feels big. So think of an 8. You've got one. Those of you who know my daughter, fine, you can pick her. The 9, the last one, the peacemaker or the mediator. I want to be content and avoid conflict. So the motivation for the 9 is really avoiding conflict, but also this idea of maintaining peace. And what I also like is this idea of kind of equilibrium or status quo. So it sounds real nice to say, I just want peace for everybody. Listen, my husband's a 9, and he's not like kumbaya, I want everyone to have peace. He's just like, don't bother me. There's a peace to the 9 that's also kind of like, I don't want something that's going to kind of interfere with my homeostasis here, right? But the fear underneath that for the 9 is loss and separation. I don't want anything to happen internally or externally that's going to create loss or separation, which is why 9s are oftentimes pretty amenable. They go along, they go with the flow. A lot of things aren't worth it for them to make a big deal over, or to pick a fight over, or to stand their ground about. And a lot of times that's pretty refreshing. And it's a good reminder for other numbers, like, hey, maybe some of these things that I plant my feet on are actually not that big of a deal. But what it also can look like is kind of complacent, indecisive, and it can be, there can be some passive aggression there, because if you're not actually saying what you need, that's going to catch up to you over time. Like, it doesn't feel good to not have your needs met. And so for 9s, this another thing we're not going to get into today, but there's underlying childhood messages for all these, and the 9s is kind of my presence doesn't matter. And sometimes they use that as a crutch to get out of things. Like my husband, he's 6'5". Like everything about him, like his presence, he walks into a room and people know it. And he hates that. He hates that. He would rather blend in everywhere he goes. And he never does. And it bothers him. He doesn't like that. So sometimes they use it as a crutch. Other times, so my sister is a 9. And she'll, now that she knows she's 9, and we've been doing a lot of cool work with each other relationally, she'll say in her voicemail, I'm calling you again, and that feels really risky to me because I already feel like I care about you and need you more than you care about me and need me. So if you help me back, and I'm like, good, right? She's saying it, and that's so important for a 9. So some relationship struggles for 9s. Avoiding conflict to the point of ignoring serious problems. So minimizing. Like there could be this huge thing going on. And I'm like, this is a big deal, right? And my husband's like, nah. I'm like, no, it is. It's a big deal, right? This minimizing, right? Nah, it's probably okay, right? Which sometimes can be really positive, but can also be really frustrating in a relationship to always kind of feel like you're the one who recognizes that things are important. Sleepwalking through life and relationships, losing oneself also. There's this term merging for 9s. They kind of merge to what's going on around them. Like, oh, this is kind of what's happening in this group, fine. It's a little bit like the 3, but they're not chameleon-like. They don't necessarily change themselves. They're just, their presence is pretty kind of unassuming and non-threatening, so people feel like, that 9 really agreed with me. They might not, right? But they'll just like, yeah, cool. Rarely taking the initiative to begin change or end relationships. So a lot of times when 9s come into my office for therapy, They're stuck in something that they don't know how to get out of. Because the idea of ending something themselves, walking away from something, starting over, that loss and separation fear is so great. Right? So helping them understand the importance of taking ownership of their own lives. Take a second to think about 9s in your life. Is there anybody that might resemble this type, or is this something that might resonate with you? That was like the quickest explanation you'll ever get of all 9 types, and I'm really sorry that I didn't give more time for asking questions, but now that we've gone over them all, take a step, process, reflect. Let's do that for a minute. After hearing that, or if you came in with any knowledge already of the Enneagram, do you have a general idea? This is not typing you. You don't know for sure. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and really I encourage you to read and explore. Because it's not as simple as just what it might look like behaviorally. But is there a number that really stands out to you that you think, yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like this might be me? Yeah. Yeah, you want to share?
I've already studied the Enneagram a little bit, and I'm a 4 with a 5 side.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Which means I want to be an individual, but I retreat. Like, I'll sit in the corner and watch everyone else.
Sure.
So it's that struggle of wanting to be accepted. And I'm very much in my head.
Yeah.
In my hard time.
Yeah.
I tend to go to 2.
Yeah.
So I tend to become this helper lady, which completely depletes me.
Yeah.
But I have this drive to save the world, which kills me.
So what's your name?
Jenna.
What Jenna is getting at is a deeper layer to the Enneagram that is why I believe it is so powerful. We don't just stay in one place. So if you're identifying with other numbers, it might be because you have one core number, and then you've got another one that's your wing, which you're going to access a bunch, which is one of the ones on either side of you, and you're going to go somewhere when your number's not working for you, and you're going to go somewhere when you're feeling pretty whole and integrated. So we've got access to a lot of different numbers, and that's what's really cool about it. Anyone else, kind of initially, there's something kind of like, yeah.
I learned about this summer, and I thought I was, lack of a better way, a majority 2.
Yeah.
But I think I'm a majority 1, swing into 2. Now here's my situation.
Yeah.
I have someone in my life that I'm close to that is a 5.
Yeah.
And I was told by a counselor that 2 and 5. So
My best friend's
but I am still in this situation, and my question to you is, where do I go as a 1-2
Yeah.
to learn how to make a relationship with a 5 better?
Yeah.
So I don't, that's why I came here, because
Yes.
I don't want to have the contempt,
Yeah.
but oh my goodness, I don't know how not to,
Yeah.
I don't know how to communicate with them.
Yeah. Do you? Is it somebody you're interacting with regularly?
Yes,
Okay. Can I ask personal or professional? Is it personal or professional?
family.
Okay. So some of it is even that question, and I can relate as a 2, and 1s could relate to this too, because 1s, 2s, and 6s are very doing oriented, present oriented. What do people need from me? How do I meet people's needs? And so my first response is to probably say you might be trying too hard, right? That some of that I want you to like me. I want us to be okay. Is actually kind of like whoa, right? It can come across. It can come across kind of strong. Yeah. But I would say this, and to keep it brief, but to give you an answer. One of the best things that works for my best friend's a 5, and I'm a 2. And one of the best things that works for us is when I meet her where she is in her space. So like calm, one-on-one, no real agenda, right? But if there is something I want to talk to her about, let her know ahead of time. Like, this is something that's kind of, we've talked a little bit about, can we have a conversation about that? Because being caught off guard, right? They're not external processors. And I am, and I don't know if you are, but so like to me, I'm like, let's do it. Let's hash something out. And it's like, sometimes it's like, I'm not at all at that place to hash this out. I've got like some processing I need to do on my end. So some of it is letting somebody know ahead of time if you want to have a conversation. Do you want to give any feedback? It's like, no. This is all reality here. It's like, no, I don't, right? And
Caught me off guard.
you can talk to me after. Yeah. We will, and I know you, so we can definitely talk after too. Because I think one of the things though is is for that 2 and 5 relationship is remembering that it takes time to know a 5. And years sometimes, right? Like of trust and time and experience. And so wanting to force intimacy is not going to feel okay, right? But we'll keep talking about it. But that's a really great point, that those are 2 numbers that can seemingly really conflict, but actually can work really well together. Other thoughts? You have that? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Me?
What, Mom?
I'm sorry. I was just thinking that one of the reasons I have loved this so much is that there are strengths and weaknesses in each number. And when I understood my strengths, but I am beginning to understand my weaknesses, it really helps me in becoming a better person.
Yeah.
And that's my number 1 anyway, wanting to be the better person, I guess. It also helps me in my relationships with other people, because I think, oh, but you know, this person has so much struggle with this, then I can better understand how to act with them.
Yeah.
And a lot of this, it's been about a year or so that you've got me involved in understanding this a little bit. A lot of it is trial and error also. I mean, you know, just thought I would share that, because if you want to make this work, it can, and it can be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You
and
said
the
your
front,
daughter, and she's young.
Yeah.
So age grouping.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't-
we go ahead and say, I'm gonna pigeonhole you
No,
now that you're
and
2.
no, and if you do have some ideas behaviorally of where a child might be, you're not going to tell them that. You're not like, and you're an 8, so live into this, and right? But what I do when I teach about it from a parenting or working with children's perspective, I always say, like, hold it loosely, but let it help you. So like, it helps me to think of my daughter as an 8, because when she's in a power struggle with me, I know that if I meet her there, like, I'm going to take your power no matter what, nothing good will come of it. But if I soften with her, like literally if I like soften with her and engage her warmly, I'm like, buddy, I know, yeah. Like, you know, so it helps me think of her that way, because it helps me better love her and have compassion for her. So hold it loosely and only use it in a way that is affirming and compassionate to a child, not labeling to a child, right? Yeah.
So in having conversations with other adults,
Yeah.
whether in personal or professional settings, what's kind of a quick way that we can have conversations where people can share their personality or story? They may not have Enneagram language,
Yes.
they may not want to get into all
Yes.
that, but how could we translate this into everyday relationships
Yes.
in personal and professional settings?
Yes, that's such a great question, and so appropriate for this conference. And one of the things that has helped me with so much, because I love story already and I love hearing people's narratives, is having in my mind what motivates you, what drives you, right? And that's a very different way of looking at somebody than, you know, what do you do, how do you behave, like what drives you, what motivates you, right? Because then I can have an understanding for how to connect, right? And if our motivations are very different, that's okay, and that's the whole point. And another thing that it elicits in me is curiosity. So kind of asking what questions would I ask, not to say what number are you on the Enneagram, but to get to know somebody's personality better. So what drives you, what motivates you? And I think also really kind of digging into that core personality structure of like, what do you desire? Right? What do you desire? Like, I desire connection. I just do. Like, I love connection. And that comes out in the way I interact, and that comes out in the way I view the world and I interact with the world, right? So what do you desire? So again, if you think back, these questions of, or these ideas, what do you fear, what motivates you, what stresses you, really trying to understand more deeply what is driving our behavior, both negatively and positively. So what are we afraid of, and what are we motivated toward? And I think it really, I would say, since learning it, it has really changed the way I interact with people. So let's go back, since we're out of time, just about, and go full circle to that person at the beginning that you had some discomfort toward, or maybe were even offended by. I want you to think back on that person. that might be somebody that you've typed. You might think, I'm not going to say this 100%, but maybe this is part of why this person bothers me. Maybe I'm acknowledging this characteristic, right? So maybe it's like the self-doubt, the second-guessing and doubt of a 6, right? That can wear on you. Like, oh, come on. Sometimes we got to move forward. Or that the flattering, kind of ingratiating nature of 2s sometimes. Like, oh, stop. It's so insincere, right? Or that huge, big presence, aggressive personality of the 8. Or that kind of not really wanting to rock the boat, never saying what you actually think of a 9. Or that wanting to make things right and noticing errors and mistakes everywhere like a 1. What is it about that particular person, thinking about the Enneagram language, that really does bother you? And what is one way that you can deepen understanding for that person? So if that person might identify as one of those types, what have you absorbed today of what's really going on underneath that might help you move toward that person? And again, guys, this is scratching the surface. So if you have any interest in this at all, keep digging. Keep digging. And I guess I can ask Brandon to email these to everybody because I have resources at the end. But let's end here. So we started with contempt, let's end with compassion. The definition of compassion: sympathetic consciousness of others' distress, together with the desire to alleviate it. Which I like, but I love this synonym for this talk. A synonym, according to the Webster's Dictionary, of compassion is humanity. And that's, to me, what this all boils down to. So we have differences with people culturally. We have differences with people socioeconomically. We have differences with people sexually. We have differences with people based on our gender identification. And we have differences with people on our personalities. And the humanity of that, recognizing that people see the world differently than we do. So when we go into it with assumptions that people should see the world the way we do, then we're missing their humanity and we're missing an opportunity for real connection. So I want to end us on that because I think that's really what speaks to the nature of this workshop. How do we connect with compassion instead of with contempt? Thank you.